Hey everybody, I got a video here for you today, and this is one I was planning on making like a month or two ago, and I just kind of lost track of it or not really figured out how I was going to do this. But what you are looking at here, this is Egyptian literature comprising Egyptian tales, hymns, litanies, invocations, the Book of the Dead, and cuneiform writings. And this was written a little over 100 years ago, and I have used one tale in this book before, the Tales of the Magicians coming from the 4th Dynasty, where Khufu and Khafre are searching out the architectural plans of the buildings at Giza, said by them to be built by the gods. The standard model of history and Egyptologists tell you Khufu and Khafre built the Great Pyramids of Giza. Their history tells you they were searching out the plans. Well, there's another book here. I was just going to read parts of this. Scenes in the 18th Dynasty, a son of Ramses. What were they doing? Or this is maybe the 20th Dynasty, about 3,300 years ago. What were they doing? They were searching out the Books of Thoth, the plans of the gods, the ones who built the pyramids at Giza. They were doing that in the 4th Dynasty. They were doing that 1,200 years later, and we are still doing that today, searching out the plans for the Great Pyramids. But instead of me just reading parts of this and telling you what I think it means, I'm going to read the whole story. It's kind of long. It's detailed. There are gods. There are numbers. There's very symbolic things in this story. But I'm going to challenge you to use your mind and tell me what you think this means. He's searching out the Books of Thoth. It's a pretty remarkable story. We have a lot of things involved. So here's that story. Let me know what you think. Hope you enjoy it. It's about 25 minutes long. And you all have a very nice day. Setna and the Magic Book. The mighty king, Ramses the Great, had a son named Setna Ka-em-Uast, who was a great scribe and very learned in all the ancient writings. And he had heard that the magic book of Thoth, by which a man may enchant heaven and earth and know the language of all the birds and beasts, was buried in the cemetery of Memphis. And he went to search for it with his brother Ani-hor-Eru, and when they found the tomb of the king's son, Na-nefer-ka-ptah, son of the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, Mer-neb-ptah, Setna opened it and went in. Now in the tomb was Na-nefer-ka-ptah, and with him was the Ka of his wife Ahura, for though she was buried at Koptos, her Ka dwelt at Memphis with her husband whom she loved. And Setna saw them seated before their offerings, and the book lay between them. And Na-nefer-ka-ptah said to Setna, "Who are you that break into my tomb in this way?" He said, "I am Setna, son of the great king Uzer-mat-Ra, living forever, and I come for that book which I see between you." And Na-nefer-ka-ptah said, "It cannot be given to you." And then Setna said, "But I will carry it away by force." Then Ahura said to Setna, "Do not take this book, for it will bring you trouble. It will bring trouble on you, as it has upon us. Listen to what we have suffered for it. We were the 2 children of King Mer-neb-ptah, and he loved us very much, for he had no others, and Na-nefer-ka-ptah was in his palace as heir over all the land. And when we were grown, the king said to the queen, "I will marry Na-nefer-ka-ptah to the daughter of a general, and Ahura to the son of another general." And the queen said, "No, he is in the heir. Let him marry his sister like the heir of a king. None other is fit for him." And the king said, "That is not fair. They had better be married to the children of the general." And the queen said, "It is you who are not dealing rightly with me." And the king answered, "If I have no more than these 2 children, it is right that they should marry one another. I will marry Na-nefer-ka-ptah to the daughter of an officer, and Ahura to the son of another officer. It has often been done so in our family." And at a time when there was a great feast before the king, they came to fetch me to the feast. And I was very troubled, and I did not behave as I used to do. And the king said to me, "Ahura, have you sent someone to me about this sorry matter, saying, 'Let me be married to my elder brother'?" And I said to him, "Well, let me marry the son of an officer, and he may marry the daughter of another officer, as it often happens so in our family." I laughed, and the king laughed, and the king told the steward of the palace, "Let them take Ahura to the house of Na-nefer-ka-ptah tonight, and all kinds of good things with her." So they brought me as a wife to the house of Na-nefer-ka-ptah, and the king ordered them to give me presents of gold, of silver and gold, and things from the palace. And Na-nefer-ka passed a happy time with me, and received all the presents from the palace. And we loved one another. And when I expected a child, they told the king, and he was most heartily glad. And he sent me many things, and a present of the best silver and gold and linen. And when the time came, I bore this little child that is before you. And they gave him the name of Merab, and registered him in the book of the house of life. And when my brother Na-nefer-ka-ptah went to the cemetery of Memphis, he did nothing on earth but read the writings that are in the catacombs of the kings, and the tablets of the house of life, and the inscriptions that are seen on the monuments, and he worked hard on the writings. And there was a priest there called Nesi-Ptah, and as Na-nefer-ka-ptah went into the temple to pray, it happened that he went behind this priest, and was reading the inscriptions that were on the chapels of the gods. And the priest mocked him and laughed, and Na-nefer-ka-ptah said to him, "Why are you laughing at me?" And he replied, "I was not laughing at you, or if I happened to do so, it was at your reading writings that are worthless. If you wish so much to read writings, come to me, and I will bring you to the place where the book in which Thoth himself wrote with his own hand, and which will bring you to the gods. When you read but 2 pages in this, you will enchant the heaven, the earth, the abyss, the mountains, and the sea. You shall know the birds of the sky, and the crawling things are saying, you shall see the fishes of the deep, for a divine power is there to bring them up from the depth. And when you read the 2nd page, if you are in the world of ghosts, you will become again in the shape you were in on earth. You will see the sun shining in the sky with all the gods, and the full moon." And Na-nefer-ka-ptah said, "By the life of the king, tell me of anything you want done, and I'll do it for you, if you will only send me where this book is." And the priest answered, "Na-nefer-ka-ptah, if you want to go to this place where the book is, you must give me 100 pieces of silver for my funeral, and provide they shall bury me as a rich priest." So Na-nefer-ka-ptah called his lad and told him to give the priest 100 pieces of silver, and he made them do as he wished, then everything that he asked for. Then the priest said to Na-nefer-ka-ptah, "This book is in the middle of the river at Koptos, in an iron box. In the iron box is a bronze box. In the bronze box is a sycamore box. In the sycamore box is an ivory box, and an ebony box. In the ivory and ebony box is a silver box. In the silver box is a golden box, and in that is the book. It is twisted all around with snakes and scorpions, and all other crawling things around the box in which the book is, and there is a deathless snake by the box." And when the priest told Na-nefer-ka-ptah, he did not know where on earth he was. He was so much delighted. And when he came from the temple, he told me all that had happened to him, and he said, "I shall go to Koptos, for I must fetch this book. I will not stay any longer in the north." And I said, "Let me dissuade you, for you prepare sorrow, and you will bring me into trouble in that Thebat. I will lay my hand on Na-nefer-ka-ptah to keep him from going to Koptos," but he would not listen to me. And he went to the king, and told the king all that the priest had said. The king asked him, "What is it that you want?" And he replied, "Let them give me the royal boat with its belongings, for I will go to the south with Ahura and her little boy Merab, and fetch this book without delay." So they gave him the royal boat with its belongings, and he went with him to the haven, and sailed from there up to Koptos. When the priests of Isis of Koptos and the high priest of Isis came down to us without waiting to meet Na-Nefer-Ka-Ptah and their wives also came to me. We went into the temple of Isis and Harpocrates, and Na-Nefer-Ka-Ptah brought an ox, a goose, and some wine, and made a burnt offering and a drink offering before Isis of Coptos and Harpocrates. They brought us to a very fine house with all good things, and Na-Nefer-Ka-Ptah spent 4 days there, and feasted with the priests of Isis of Coptos and the wives of the priests of Isis, also made holiday with me. And the morning of the 5th day came, and Na-Nefer-Ka-Ptah called a priest to him, and made a magic cabin that was full of men and tackle. He put the spell upon it, and put life in it, and gave them breath, and sank it in the water. He filled the royal boat with sand, and took leave of me, and sailed from the haven. I sat by the river at Coptos, that I might see what would become of him. And he said, Workmen, work for me, even at the place where the book is. And they toiled by night and by day, and when they had reached it, in 3 days he threw the sand out, and made a shoal in the river. And then he found on it entwined serpents and scorpions, and all of the crawling things around the box in which the book was. And by it he found a deathless snake around the box. And he laid the spell upon the entwined serpents and scorpions and all the crawling things which were around the box, that they should not come out. And he went to the deathless snake, and fought with him, and killed him. But he came to life again, and took a new form. He then fought again with him a second time, but he came to life again, and took a third form. Then he cut him into 2 parts, and put sand between the parts, that he should never appear again. Na-Nefer-Ka-Ptah went to the place where he found the box. He uncovered a box of iron, and opened it. He found then a box of bronze, and opened that. Then he found a box of sycamore wood, and opened that. Again he found a box of ivory and ebony, and opened that. And yet he found a box of silver, and opened that. And then he found a box of gold, and he opened that, and found the book in it. He took the book from the golden box, and read a page of spells from it. He enchanted the heaven and the earth, the abyss, the mountains, and the sea. He knew that the birds of the sky, the fish of the deep, and the beasts of the hills all said. He read another page of spells, and saw the sun shining in the sky with all the gods, the full moon, and the stars in their shapes. He saw the fishes of the deep, for a divine power was present that brought them up from the water. He then read the spell upon the workmen that he had made and taken from the haven, and said to them, Work for me, back to the place from which I came. And they toiled night and day, so he came back to the place where I sat by the river of Coptos. I had not drunk or eaten anything, and had done nothing on earth, but sat like one who was gone to the grave. I then told Na-Nefer-Ka-Ptah that I wished to see this book, for which we had taken so much trouble. He gave the book into my hands, and when I read a page of spells in it, I also enchanted heaven and earth, the abyss, the mountains, and the sea. I also knew what the birds of the sky, the fishes of the deep, and the beasts of the hills all said. I read another page of spells, and saw the sun shining in the sky with all the gods, the full moon, and the stars in their shapes. I saw the fishes of the deep, for a divine power was present that brought them up from the water. As I could not write, I asked Na-Nefer-Ka-Ptah, who was a good writer and a very learned one. He called for a new piece of papyrus, and wrote on it all that was in the book before him. He dipped it in beer, and washed it off in the liquid, for he knew that if it were washed off, and he drank it, he would know all that there was in the writing. We returned back to Coptos the same day, and made a feast before Isis of Coptos and Harpocrates, and then went to the haven, and sailed, and went northward of Coptos. And as we went on, Thoth discovered all that Na-Nefer-Ka-Ptah had done with the book, and Thoth hastened to tell Ra, and said, Now know that my book and my revelation are with Na-nefer-ka-ptah, son of the king Mer-neb-ptah. He has forced himself into my place and robbed it, and seized my box with the writings, and killed my guards who protected it. And Ra replied to him, He is before you, take him and all of his kin. He sent a power from heaven with the command, Do not let Na-nefer-ka-ptah return safe to Memphis with all his kin. And after this hour, the little boy Mereb, going out from the awning of the royal boat, fell into the river. He called on Ra, and everybody went. Everybody who was on the bank raised a cry. Na-nefer-ka-ptah went out of the cabin and read the spell over him. He brought his body up because a divine power brought him to the surface. He read another spell over him and made him tell of all what happened to him, and of what Thoth had said before Ra. We turned back with him to Koptos. We brought him to the house, the good house. We fetched the people to him, and made one embalm him, and we buried him in his coffin in the cemetery of Koptos, like a great and noble person. And Na-nefer-ka-ptah, my brothers, said, Let us go down, let us not delay, for the king has not yet heard of what has happened to him, and his heart will be sad about it. So we went to the haven, we sailed, and did not stay to the north of Koptos. When we were come to the place where the little boy Mereb had fallen into the water, I went out from the awning of the royal boat, and I fell into the river. They called Na-nefer-ka-ptah, and he came out from the cabin of the royal boat. He read a spell over me, and brought my body up, because a divine power brought me to the surface. He drew me out, and read the spell over me, and made me tell him of all that had happened to me, and of what Thoth had said before Ra. Then he turned back with me to Koptos. He brought me to the good house. He fetched the people to me, and made me one embalm me. As great and noble people are buried, and laid me in the tomb where Mereb, my young child, was. He turned to the haven, and sailed down, and delayed not in the north of Koptos. When he was come to the place where we fell into the river, he said to his heart, Shall I not better turn back again to Koptos, that I may lie by them? For if not, when I go down to Memphis, and the king asks for his children, what shall I say to him? Can I tell him, I have taken your children to the Thebaid, and killed them while I remained alive, and I have come to Memphis still alive? Then he made them bring him a little linen cloth of striped byssus. He made a band, and bound the book firmly, and tied it upon him. Na-nefer-ka-ptah then went out of the awning of the royal boat, and fell into the river. He cried on Ra, and all those who were on the bank made an outcry, saying, Great woe, sad woe! Is he lost, that good scribe and able man that has no equal? The royal boat went on without anyone on earth knowing where Na-nefer-ka-ptah was. I went on to Memphis, and they told all this to the king. And the king went down to the royal boat in mourning, and all the soldiers and high priests of Ptah were in mourning, and all the officials and courtiers. And when he saw Na-nefer-ka-ptah, who was in the inner cabin of the royal boat, from his rank of high scribe he lifted him up, and they saw the book by him. And the king said, Let one hide this book that is with him. And the officers of the king, the priests of Ptah, and the high priest of Ptah said to the king, Our lord, may the king live as long as his son. Na-nefer-ka-ptah was a good scribe, and a very skilled man, and the king had him laid in his good house to the 16th day, and they had him wrapped to the 35th day, and laid him on the 17th day, and then had him put in his grave, in his resting place. I have now told you the sorrow which has come upon us because of this book for which you ask, saying, Let it be given to me. You have no claim to it, and indeed, for the sake of it, we have given up our life on earth. And Setna said to Ahura, Give me the book which I see between you and Na-nefer-ka-ptah, If you do not, I will take it by force. And then Na-nefer-ka-ptah rose from the seat and said, Are you Setna, to whom my wife has told of all these blows of fate, which you have not suffered? Can you take this book by your skill as a good scribe? If indeed you can play games with me, let us play a game, then, of 52 points. And Setna said, I am ready. And the board and its pieces were put before him. And Na-nefer-ka-ptah won a game from Setna, and he put the spell upon him and defended himself with the game board that was before him, and sunk into the ground above his feet. He did the same at the second game, and won it from Setna, and sunk him into the ground to his waist. He did the same at a third game, and made him sink into the ground up to his ears. Then Setna struck Na-nefer-ka-ptah with a great blow to his hand. And Setna called to his brother, Ani-hor-Eru, and said to him, Make haste, and go up upon the earth, and tell the king all that has happened to me, and bring me the talisman of my father Ptah, and my magic books. And he hurried up upon earth, and told the king all that had happened to Setna. And the king said, Bring him the talisman of his father Ptah, and his magic books. And Ani-hor-Eru hurried down into the tomb. He laid the talisman on Setna, and he sprang up again immediately. And then Setna reached out his hand for the book and took it. Then as Setna went out from the tomb, there went a light before him, and a darkness behind him. And Ahura wept at him, and she said, Glory to the King of darkness, hail to the King of light. All power is gone from the tomb. But Na-nefer-ka-ptah said to Ahura, Do not let your heart be sad. I will make him bring back this book, with a forked stick in his hand, and a fire pan on his head. And Setna went out from the tomb, and closed behind him, as it was before. Then Setna went to the king, and told him everything that had happened to him with the book. And the king said to Setna, Take back the book to the grave of Na-nefer-ka-ptah like a prudent man, or else he will bring you it with a forked stick in your hand and a fire pan on your head. But Setna would not listen to him. When Setna had unrolled the book, he did nothing on earth but read it to everybody. So Setna went to Memphis, and embraced his children, for that they were alive. And the king said to him, Were you not drunk to do so? Then Setna told all the things that had happened to Tabua and Na-nefer-ka-ptah. And the king said, Setna, I have already lifted up my hand against you before, and I said, He will kill you if you do not take back the book to the place you took it from. And you have never listened to me till this hour. Now then, take the book to Na-nefer-ka-ptah with a forked stick in your hand, and a fire pan on your head. So Setna went out before the king with a forked stick in his hand and a fire pan on his head. He went down to the tomb in which was Na-nefer-ka-ptah. And Ahura said to him, It is Ptah, the great god, that has brought you back safe. Na-nefer-ka-ptah laughed and said, This is the business that I told you before. And when Setna had praised Na-nefer-ka-ptah, he found it, as the proverb says, The sun was in the whole tomb. And Ahura and Na-nefer-ka-ptah besought Setna greatly, and Setna said, Na-nefer-ka-ptah is aught disgraceful. And Na-nefer-ka-ptah said, Setna, you know this, that Ahura, Merhab, and her child, behold, they are in Koptos. Bring them here into this tomb, by the skill of a good scribe. Let it be impressed upon you to take pains, and to go to Koptos to bring them here. Setna then went out from the tomb of the king, and told the king all that Na-nefer-ka-ptah had told him. The king said, Setna, go to Koptos, and bring back Ahura and Merhab. He answered the king, Let one give me the royal boat and all its belongings. And they gave him the royal boat and its belongings, and he left the haven, and sailed without stopping till he came to Koptos. And they made this known to the priests of Isis at Koptos, and to the high priest of Isis. And behold, they came down to him, and gave him their hand to the shore. He went up with them and entered into the temple of Isis of Coptos and of Harcoprates. He ordered one to offer him an ox, a goose, and some wine, and he made some burnt offering and a drinking offering before Isis of Coptos and Harpocrates. He went to the cemetery of Coptos with the priest of Isis and the high priest of Isis. They dug about for 3 days and 3 nights, for they searched even in all the catacombs which were in the cemetery of Coptos. They turned over the stelas of the scribes of the double house of life, and read the inscriptions that they found on them, but they could not find the resting place of Ahura or Merab. Now Nefer-Kapatah perceived that they could not find the resting place of Ahura and her child Merab, so he raised himself up as a venerable, very old ancient, and came before Setna. And Setna saw him, and Setna said to the ancient, "You look like a very old man. Do you know where is the resting place of Ahura and her child Merab?" The ancient said to Setna, "It was told by the father of my father to the father of my father, and the father of my father has said to my father, the resting place of Ahura and of her child Merab is in the mound of the south of a town called Pahepmeto." And Setna said to the ancient, "Perhaps we may do damage to Pahepmeto, and you are ready to lead me one to the town for the sake of that." The ancient replied to Setna, "If one listens to me, shall he therefore destroy the town of Pahepmo? If they do not find Ahura and her child Merab under the south corner of their town, I may be disgraced." They attended to the ancient. They found the resting place of Ahura and her child Merab under the south corner of the town of Pahepmo. Setna laid them in the royal boat to bring them as honored persons, and restored the town of Pahepmo as it originally was. And Nefer-Kapatah made Setna know that it was he who had come to Coptos to enable them to find out where the resting place of Ahura and her child Merab. So Setna left the haven in the royal boat and sailed without stopping, and reached Memphis with all the soldiers who were with him. And when they told the king, he came down to the royal boat. He took them as honored persons, escorted them to the catacombs in which Nefer-Kapatah was, and smoothed down the ground over them. This is the completed writing of the tale of Setna Kahem, Wast, and Nefer-Kapatah, and his wife Ahura, and their child Merab. It was written in the 35th year of the month Tabai.